The main aim of our research was to identify and analyse the main determinants of bilateral free trade agreements. These agreements were mainly between two countries, however a couple of cases were comprised of one country and one trading bloc. With the EU referendum scheduled for June 26 this year, the topic has never been more relevant. Some of the main supporters of leaving Europe have said it is important Britain now looks beyond its borders to exploit the vast opportunities that economies such as China, Japan and Brazil can offer. We decided that using quantitative data analysis and statistical analysis would be the best ways to conduct our research. In doing this, we were able to exploit the vast amounts of information that statistical databases, such as the Regional Trade Agreement Information System and the World Trade Export databases, had to offer. We would then be able to use the data collected in the primary stage of our research to make certain interpretations. To do this, we chose to display our data visually on a data matrix, and then use this data matrix to create a truth table. We would list each of the 45 free trade agreements we had chosen, and then mark each variable with either a 1, meaning trait present, or a 2, meaning trait not present. Once the truth table was completed, we were able to make certain interpretations regarding our variables, such as identifying those that are integral to free trade and those that are not so important. The first of our variables was geography, or geographical distance. Initially, we were going to mark the trait as present if two countries were on the same continent. However, we soon realised that some countries in bilateral partnerships that are on different continents, such as Turkey and Israel, that are less than 600 miles apart, were far closer than some agreements on the same continent, such as India and Japan, which are over 4,000 miles apart. Therefore, we added a within 3,000 miles clause to the variable. Geography as a variable was only present in 19 out of the 45 case agreements, making it the least integral of all of our identified determinants. Our research suggested that the geographical distance would have been more of a problem in the past, but now, since this has been overcome by quicker and cheaper transport, it is less so of a major problem. Our second variable, inter-industry trade, was seen as a present trait if two countries within a bilateral free trade agreement shared less than 5 out of their top 10 exports. A present trait in 29 out of our 45 case agreements, inter-industry trade was the second most important. This was contrary to our initial research that suggested that countries trading intra-industrially as opposed to inter-industrially would appear more often. The third and fourth determinants identified during our research stage were development of a country and its economy and the economic mass of two countries, both in comparison to one another. Development was measured using the Human Development Index, a measurement that combines life expectancy, education and income per capita into one single figure. The trait was seen to be present if the two countries in a free trade agreement were on the same level of human development. The UN categorises the 4 levels of development as low, medium, high and very high development. Development appears in 27 out of the 45 cases, making it the third most important determinant of bilateral trade. Generally, countries usually traded with other countries at the same levels of development. However, 2 outliers were China and India. This can be explained by their fast-growing economies and their economies in relation to their population sizes. Economic mass did not occur as frequently among free trade agreements as development did, with the trait only being present in 20 out of the 45 cases. What was interesting about economic mass is that it appeared in little over a third of existing free trade agreements, but in almost 2/3 of proposed agreements. This could just be a coincidence, or it could suggest that economic mass as a determinant of bilateral trade is growing in stature and will have a greater influence on what countries enter into trade deals in the coming years. The final determinant of bilateral trade that was identified in our primary research stage was diplomacy. All of the past research that we looked at has suggested that diplomacy was likely to be a constant across our research, and that only countries with positive recent relations would trade with one another. Initially, we struggled with coming up with a way to measure diplomacy that wasn't just counting out recent wars. Eventually, we stumbled across a method that used 2 separate variables: the number of common treaties and agreements that 2 countries had signed, against the number of conflicts they had contested against one another, both of these variables being measured over the last 10 years. Unsurprisingly, despite our super clever way of measuring diplomacy, our results turned out to be exactly the same as previous research. Diplomacy as a trait was present in 44 of the 45 case agreements. There was only one reason why we couldn't just mark ones across the entire board, and that was because Russia had to go and invade Georgia in 2008. The Russia-Georgia Free Trade Agreement is a special case, however, and the figures highlight just how important diplomatic relations are in determining trade. This has been a brief summary of our group research on determining bilateral trade. We hope you have learned at least a couple of things in the last 5 minutes. From Charlie, Fumile, Jamie and Karan, thank you very much for watching.